Greetings, students, and welcome to this episode of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. This is where you come as a community in order to discuss more about them. Hopefully, this will inspire you to travel more and ultimately enjoy life more. Now, you can reach me on a variety of different social media platforms, including and starting with my website at theprofessortravel.com, on YouTube, on Facebook, and now on TikTok. You can reach me at The Professor Travel. If you're an Instagrammer, you can find me there at the_professor_travel. If you're a Twitter, then you can find me there on The Professor TR1. Sorry, I just like that term. And then if you are a blogger, you can find me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. I have not had my coffee yet, so I apologize. To my visiting professor today, who obviously is drinking her coffee.
Yeah, never without.
Morissa, how are you today?
Very good. It's nice and cool here in Oregon.
Oh, lovely. Morissa, we have chatted probably, I would say, 7 or 8 times now about different travel destinations. You do a fantastic job of educating my students. But for those who, for whatever reason, have not had an opportunity to see you or hear from you before, can you maybe go over just a couple of tidbits about your credentials, as well as maybe some places that you've traveled before?
You bet. Well, I'm a professor of international business, business law, and business ethics. I know that's an oxymoron. Sorry. Anyway, I also am a photographer. I am a cultural photographer, which means I travel all over the world and I take photographs of things that bring culture to people, whether it's animals, as you see in that fun photograph, and I'll explain that in a minute, or people from all over the world, places, things like that. It's kind of my inspiration to really bring that to people so they can see it and experience it. So places I've traveled, all over the world. I mean, we were talking about this a few weeks ago. We're about counting up the places. I finally did. I think it's about 47 countries.
Wow. See, that's really awesome. You're giving me something to strive for, especially after this pandemic craziness
Yeah.
that we're going through right now.
When we are free to move about the world, you'll
It's
have
go
to come
time.
to me in another country.
Actually, that's a good. I would love to interview you when you are actually abroad, so that way
Absolutely.
it's
I
like a
always have my
live type
computer.
thing. That's fantastic. So, talk to us about this picture. This is, by the way, just so the audience knows, my favorite animal in the entirety of the world are zebras.
Oh,
And
wow.
and
I didn't
and
know
and,
that.
and I actually have I had an interview where someone asked me what my favorite animal was and why. And I said, well, what most people don't understand that our zebras are a member of the mule family, like donkeys, and like zebras, I like to earn my stripes. So there you go.
Oh, bum. Actually, they've actually made it a zebra with a mule. Actually, a donkey, and they called it a zonkey.
A
And this is no
zonkey.
joke. I know it sounds like a joke. It's not. There is an animal called a zonkey, which is kind of fun. But this picture, yeah. So I was in South Africa, not the subject matter we're talking about today, but the picture is fun.
Hmm.
I was in South Africa. I was hanging out with a friend there that lives in South Africa. This is many, many years ago. Obviously, I'm much younger there.
Oh, stop.
And we went to a rescue where they rescue baby animals that, the mothers have abandoned them or were killed for whatever reason. And this baby zebra decided that I looked like a mother zebra and was trying to nurse.
Oh dear.
Um, I think I had the largest chest there, and the zebra saw it and just thought, "Mama!" And of course, I'm wearing a black and white shirt too, so that didn't help, you know. But yeah, so that my friend happened to snap this photograph, and just every once in a while he'll send it to me again just to remind me of my. He calls me Mother Africa,
Oh,
so.
lovely. Being accosted by a zebra. This is lovely. Not to make an ass out of myself, but hey.
Oh, too soon, too
Yep.
soon.
So, as you were making mention, this is not the subject matter that we're talking about today. Instead, we're actually talking about a country I've never been to before, which is Lithuania. Now, I've been to Estonia, which is not that far away from Lithuania, and obviously been to Germany and Russia. But talk to me a little bit about Lithuania. I mean, what would your average traveler want to go there for, and what do they want to know about this place?
You know, I had never really thought about it before. I went primarily because I found out through genealogy that my family had a history of living there since at least the 1200s that we know of. There was actually a book written about my family.
Hmm.
Yeah, who
Who
knew?
knew? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it was crazy. And so that kind of was my impetus to go
Okay,
and really see the country and walk in the footsteps of my ancestors. But it's a beautiful country and it's part of the European Union, so it's relatively easy to get in, get out. Well, normally outside of a pandemic.
true.
But it's very easy to get around. It'll be familiar to people. Most people speak English, and if you don't, you have Google Translator. So it's great. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Now, how long were you going to be there for?
We actually went for 7 days.
Okay. And in your planning phase, like, what were you like? How long in advance did you have to plan for this kind of a trip? Was this like a spur of the moment kind of thing, or were you like,
No,
no, we're
I
going
did
to?
plan in advance for this one. And part of, you really don't have to. It depends on when you're going, I guess. I tend to travel in shoulder season, which is like September, October, March, February, March, April, that kind of thing. You have a little less planning to do, but still, if you want to get the best airfares, you're going to want to plan ahead.
Yeah. And just as a caveat to this for my students who don't know, the reason I ask this question, because a lot of you may assume, oh, yeah, of course you're going to plan out a trip. There have been times where I or Morissa have
Yeah.
like traveled on the spur of a moment because maybe you wanted to hit your airline miles thing. And so it's like, okay, well, I have to travel this weekend in order to get something, or I'm going to lose a bunch of airline miles. So I want to make sure to capitalize on that. What
That's
was
how that's how I ended up in Cambodia last year.
exactly that was the whole process.
And
Now,
catching COVID. So, hey.
well, that's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how the visa process was, or did you need that? Did you just have to
No,
have a
because it's
passport?
European Union, you don't need a visa as an American. Well, like I said, at the time, I don't know about now, but no, you don't need a visa. So it's really relatively simple. That is one of the nice parts. Like going to Estonia, which is a plan of mine for next year. You don't need a visa. It's the process of getting in is very easy. It's very straightforward, much like going to most European countries or the UK. Actually, it's easier than the UK, but yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I remember when I was on my Balkans trip, or I'm sorry, not Balkans, Baltics, my Baltic
Mhm.
trip. The only country there I needed to have a visa for was Russia, and they gave it
Yes.
to you as you were coming off the cruise ship. You had to actually go through like a port, but with Estonia,
Yeah.
they didn't make me do that at all. So,
No. I mean, I went to Russia, I went to Russia actually when it was the Soviet Union,
mhm,
and you couldn't go without an escort.
yeah.
You had to go on a special trip. But yeah, that's really the rest of Europe easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so too. Now, in preparing for this, hold on just one second. Let me get another glass of.
You need some coffee. Yeah.
That's what
Let
it
me do
is. I'm
that
having
too.
iced coffee first thing in the morning. So cheers.
Ah,
Okay, so in the pre-packing process, that is a lot of P's in that words.
it is.
Okay, so in the pre-packing process, what are you preparing for?
Just like a general trip that you would to anywhere in Europe. I mean, there aren't, a lot of clubs and what have you, but I'm not a club person. I'm a cultural photographer, but there are people that might like that thing. And I mean, if I was younger, I would as well. I did when I lived in Europe, but you're going to pack like you normally would for any European vacation. The clothing is the same. It would be no change to your preparedness.
Okay. Now, in terms of thinking back to where you were leaving from, which city were you leaving from the U.S. in order to get over to there?
Left from Portland,
Okay.
went via Icelandair,
Okay.
actually, through Iceland. Did not stop that particular time, but and I don't know if they're still doing it, post pandemic because airlines are suffering a little bit.
There's
But
a
one of
lot of
the
stuff going on, yeah, right now.
Yeah, but one of the things that was really nice about Icelandair, we did not take advantage of it. I went to Iceland a different time, but they do offer free stops in Iceland, either going or coming back. So that is one of the benefits. It's not the most luxurious airline. Did get Alaskan miles. so that was a plus.
Hey, that's good.
But yeah, always a plus for the miles. But it's a nice airline. It's purely, it's sufficient. It's just fine.
I think it's run by, or in part subsidized by, the Icelandic government
It
because
is.
they want the tourism in the area.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and by the way, for my students who have not had the opportunity to see either Marissa's Cambodia video or the Iceland video, they are both on the channel. So please take a look at those. They're fantastic. Now, I assume that you parked at the airport, or did you actually just get dropped off?
No, in Portland, we have a really wonderful MAX system, which we talked about in the Oregon issue.
Was that another video of
which
ours?
just went live today.
Yeah.
And that drops you off right at the terminal. So, and I, we just don't bother with, dealing with, sometimes if we're tired, we'll take Uber. Like we probably did take Uber home, but getting there, we just jumped on the MAX train and landed right at the airport.
Okay, fantastic. And which city were you actually landing in Lithuania?
Well, actually, to be honest with you, we went to Copenhagen first.
Oh, okay. So this wasn't a direct flight. It was you made a stop in Copenhagen, and did you spend any time in Copenhagen?
We did. We spent a few days in Copenhagen, and then we also, I have a cousin, a distant cousin that found me through genealogy that lives in southern Sweden, which is right across the bridge from Copenhagen.
Yep.
We went and spent a few days with her and her dad and visited Lund University. And then from there, from Copenhagen, we flew to Vilnius. From Vilnius, we did fly home. So we went into, it was an open jaw into Copenhagen and out of Vilnius.
I spent I think it was 2 days in Copenhagen when I was there, and I had a chance to go to Tivoli Garden, which was really
Love it.
amazing.
We had a blast. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
felt
beautiful.
like a kid.
Yeah, it's kind of like the predecessor to Disneyland. It's really fantastic, and it's well kept up.
I think it's the oldest amusement park in the world, isn't it?
I think it is. Yeah, it's been around since
it's
been around since the 1600s as kind of a garden, but then they actually converted it and they have like rides and attractions and fairground stuff and acts and parades and things like that. So I mean, yeah, it's the predecessor to Disneyland, and even they have some animatronic stuff too. But
and it's right in the middle of Copenhagen.
Correct, which is amazing. Okay, so then you head over to Lithuania, and again, what is the name of the city? So I'm gonna get it wrong.
It's Vilnius.
Vilnius. Okay.
Vilnius.
Okay, so you land in Vilnius. Talk to me a little about the culture there, what it was like, and where you were going to be staying at.
Okay. Vilnius is a great airport. It's a small city, which is really nice. It's walkable. We rented a car for the entire time, for the 7 days, because we were making Vilnius our base and then branching out every day around the country.
Okay.
There are other ways to do it. You're still renting a car. You can, stay in different cities, but we chose to stay in Vilnius. We wanted to get a real immersion and a feel for a place. We got an Airbnb, and which I highly recommend purely because you really get embedded with the people. And we had a fantastic 1-bedroom apartment for an entire week, and I think it was $40 a night.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy good.
It was beautiful. It was a ground floor, beautiful apartment right on the city square. I mean, right there. Yeah, and it was incredible. The location was, you could not have gotten anything better. There are no hotels in that location. So it was right near all the main city sites, and lovely hosts. We had the apartment to ourselves. They lived next door in another apartment with their daughter.
Oh, so like in the event of an emergency, you could just go next door and say, "Hey,
just next door." Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we had lox and bagels every morning. We went to the market and got, because here's the thing about Lithuania that's funny. It was, prior to World War II, it was 45% Jewish. Mm-hmm. So, and then of course, World War II happened and there are 3,000 Jews left. And I'll get into a little bit about that. But when they talk about Lithuanian food, it's very familiar. It's Eastern European Jewish food. Mm-hmm. It's very heavily influenced. So you've got the potato pancakes, you've got lox and bagels. It's just, when I got there, I'm like, I'm home.
This is just like a deli. It's fantastic.
It had better Jewish food than Portland. I'm going to tell you that right now.
That's awesome. One of the things I love about going to Europe I'm not normally a breakfast person,
Mhm.
but when I go there, I love the spread of the breakfasts I get, whether I was in Copenhagen, whether I was in Rome, whether I was in Paris. When I was in Paris, actually, we were in like a Marriott timeshare that was outside
Mhm.
of the location where Euro Disney was located at. And there was a small village about, I'd say probably less than a quarter mile away. And I would wake up in the morning and I'd walk over there. They had a bakery over there so I could get fresh baguettes and croissants and all kinds of pastries. I get chocolate, I get juices and all this stuff,
Mhm.
and I bring it back with me. So we'd all have like a really lovely start to the day, maybe a little glass of wine as breakfast. I mean, go figure. I mean, come on, I'm on my
You're on
vacation. Why
vacation.
not? Yeah, exactly. Why
Yeah.
not give it a shot? And
Hey.
so, yeah, it's a great way to start off your day. It's really nice. The one thing I will say is if you're going to store food in Europe, it seems like a lot of the appliances, like especially the refrigerators, are much more contained, much smaller. I don't know if that's
It depends. I mean, if you're in a like an Airbnb, they're full size
okay.
for the most part. But yes, in hotels that they're going to be smaller. But I'm the same as you. I don't eat breakfast at home. I'm just not a breakfast person.
Same with
But
me. Yeah.
coffee's my breakfast. But when I travel, I love to have local breakfast, especially if I'm in an Airbnb or like a timeshare type situation where you
Yeah.
can go to the market and pick stuff up and bring it back and have it. I agree. I love that.
It's such a treat, and
It is.
sometimes, and the spread that I get when I'm either staying at a hotel or staying at a
Mhm.
shared location is fantastic. It's like going into a buffet. Well, I mean, obviously this was pre-COVID, but yeah,
Pre-pandemic, yeah.
yeah. But I mean, you would go in and they have every possible thing that you could possibly imagine, whether it was waffles or like when I was in Italy, they have these like I don't even know what it's called. You may know. It's like a little jar of custard with like fruit on the top of it and stuff like that. And
They're just parfaits.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't, it might be like a panna cotta.
panna
No,
cotta. That's exactly what
panna
it was.
cotta. Yeah,
It's a panna cotta, and I was
yeah.
just, I just love that. It was just like
Oh,
when you're
yeah,
in these different cultures and you're having these different things, and you're like, oh well, I don't normally have this at home. You know, this is kind of fun and exciting.
yeah.
It really does give you an idea of like what it means like to be out, what it means to
Oh, yeah.
just go out and
I
travel
I
and
I used to
enjoy.
I used to stay in five-star hotels because my ex worked for Sony Pictures and was head of meetings and services, so
Mhm.
we were guests at, five-star hotels all over the world, and even at hotels and even at like three-star hotels, the breakfasts are incredible.
Yeah,
So hotel, or if you do it yourself, it doesn't really matter. It's still the same. I totally agree.
I'm going to take us out of the subject matter for just a second to ask you a travel consultant type question. When I was in Rome,
But
we
then hang on, that reminds me, I didn't mention that I was a travel
oh
consultant for
yes.
or in the travel industry for almost 30 years. I forgot about that part. So
So in other words, you're a subject matter expert on many a thing related to travel.
anything. Yeah.
Um, when I was in Rome recently,
Mhm.
this was last year, we instead of getting a five-star hotel, we opted to get a three-star hotel, but then we upgraded to a suite in the three-star hotel, and it was spectacular.
Highly recommend that.
So yeah, I wonder if that's the typical strategy one would go with rather than because I mean I've done a couple of five stars before, like when I was in Copenhagen,
Mhm.
or no, I'm not Copenhagen. I was in Amsterdam, which is across from Amsterdam,
Right.
and that was a five star, but it was kind of like this isn't really anything special. You know, I wasn't really blown away.
I personally recommend doing what you did. And the reason is your bigger five-star hotels, getting in and out of them, they're not going to be placed like right on a city square
Yeah,
or just getting to where you want to get to is a process. They're also going to have more expensive cabs and all of these other things. Whereas if you go with a three-star hotel and then do something, upgrade or not upgrade. I mean, my philosophy is how much time am I spending in the room? But if you like the creature comforts and they're fun, I've enjoyed them too. I would opt for a three-star and upgrade to a suite like you did because you're still getting the benefit of that smaller, more local hotel, closer to things more likely right on a main street, accessible street, whatever it might be, and then still a nice suite. And I think the service is better, quite frankly.
Excellent. And if any of you guys want to see the videos on that, you can take a look at my Rome videos from last year. Those are on the YouTube channel as well. So let's talk about your itinerary. You're going to be there for about a week. What are your plans?
Well, we had the car, so we wanted to, of course, one day, at least one day, walk the whole city of Vilnius. It's again, it's a small city, so you can do it in one day. I'm not saying it's not tiring, but you can do it. Um,
But
and
but you know what? Honestly, most of the places I go to in Europe, you are walking a lot. And that's
oh
maybe
yeah,
like I can have a, and maybe that's the reason that they have a big breakfast is because you're going to be walking a lot during the day, whether I'm in Amsterdam, whether I'm in Oslo, whether I'm in Rome, or Barcelona, you are constantly moving. And in a lot of
oh
places, they even have a lot of bicycles for rent.
yeah. Well, and you don't even need a bicycle in Vilnius. It's really walkable. Um, the one thing they don't have is like a hop on, hop off bus, which a lot of European cities do, even Copenhagen, but you don't need it because the city is small. So we walked around Vilnius. We happened to be there towards the end of our week. I had no idea that the Pope was arriving.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah,
The Pope?
The Pope. And we got up early and we went and stood right at the barricades. Plenty of room because again, Lithuania is not a huge country. And we were he drove right past us, and I was taking pictures and my spouse was doing video, and he looked right at us. We were like maybe 6 feet from him, and he waved, and it was, I'm not even Catholic. I was excited. It was, I don't know. I can't tell you why, but it was
Which
the Pope.
which Pope was this? Was this
Current,
Benedict? Oh, okay. So this was the current Pope. Okay,
the cool Pope.
the cool Pope, the chill Pope. Yeah, he's the
Yeah,
he's the chill Pope.
isn't he? He's Argentinian, I think.
He is. He's from South
Yeah,
America,
yeah,
Francis. Yeah.
yeah.
He's been a very down home,
He's a
chill
chill
kind of
Pope.
guy.
Yeah,
He's a chill Pope, is what I call him. So yeah, he's really kind of cool.
It's
Okay.
a little tidbit for you.
So you have this car. You're gonna be driving over the place. The first day is primarily spent just getting to know the city, getting to know the shops, getting to know your landlords for the time being,
And
and
getting to know the culture.
Mhm.
Um, well, we got there in the afternoon, so we did a lot of that the first day in, toward the afternoon and the evening.
Mhm.
Then found a nice. We were right on Old Town Vilnius as well, to one side of the square. I mean, it's all old, but this is like the really old part, the Jewish Quarter,
Yeah.
what it's called, and you'll see that in one of the photographs.
Mhm.
And it's we went and had this most amazing meal for pennies, and we had a bottle of wine. We had I can't even remember what the local liquor is, but they were giving us local shots of local liquor, thanking us for coming in. Just a wonderful time and very hospitable people. It was nice.
Let me ask you a question. Now, I'm a member of the LGBT community. If I'm traveling to Eastern Europe, I'm always aware of my surroundings because I'm concerned that some of the places, especially in the Eastern Bloc countries,
Yeah.
are not as inviting to members of the LGBT community, especially if they're out and about.
Mhm.
Um, what would you say to a person like myself who might be concerned about something like that?
Well, I mean, I'm LGBT also. My spouse is female. Two women together have less of an issue
Yeah.
than two men together. They make all sorts of assumptions. My wife is younger. They think we're mother and daughter. It's offensive, but anyway. So, she's not that young, but only 11 years. But it's I always as well err on the side of caution
Yeah.
anywhere I go when traveling, but no one seemed to think anything in Lithuania. I mean, our one bedroom apartment had, a king size bed in the bedroom. They made sure to say, "Oh, and there's a bed in the sofa." But they because they didn't make any assumptions, but no one gave us any problems whatsoever. I mean, we typically don't hold hands and things in public
Yeah.
anyway.
I'm not a public display of
I'm not a
affection person.
PDA type of
Yeah.
person, but we were cautious just out of an abundance of caution,
Mhm.
not to say, "Oh, this is my wife."
Yeah.
We would just say, "We're traveling together. Hi, this is Amy. I'm Morissa." That type of thing.
Excellent. Now, talk to me a little bit about this food that you had for pennies on the dollar. I'm kind of curious about what kind of cuisine. I know what the breakfast was like because I grew up in a Jewish household. Believe me, I love it.
The cuisine is probably not only what Jewish Americans have grown up with, but things that Americans would be very familiar with. I mean, potato pancakes are something that all Americans are familiar with. Meats, sausages,
So we're talking about heartier foods.
hearty foods. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely, because they do have harsh winters,
Yeah.
so their foods are hearty. It's just really good stuff. I mean, it's stuff we're used to. It's nothing unusual, really.
Excellent. Did you perceive if there was any options for people who might be either vegetarians or vegans on the menu or anything like that? Were there
Yeah,
salads or stuff like that?
there's always something. I mean, they have, vegetables and all sorts of things. There were plenty of options, I would say. I mean, this restaurant happened to be a meat restaurant, a butcher restaurant, so it's not the place you would go,
Sure.
but there were plenty of options. There were vegetarian restaurants as well.
Oh, we're there. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay, so you're spending the first day just getting to know your surroundings in Vilnius.
Mhm.
Talk to me about what's on the agenda after that.
Then we got in our car, and I had several cities kind of planned out to go visit,
Okay.
and or I shouldn't say cities, towns, and a lot of cousins giving me lists of grave sites and things to look for, which I never could find. But we went to quite a few. Every day we would just get in the car and drive. We would drive east, we would drive north, we would drive west, and south. So we really just spent the whole day out and about. And one of my favorite things to do, and why I like to rent a car, is because I love just randomly stopping at places, talking to local people. We stopped in this one place, which is a little bit a city. It was a little bit larger, Utena, and a lot of my relatives, my personal relatives, came from that town. And I tried to go over to, well, we stopped at a bakery, and had the most delicious baked goods and coffee. And they couldn't speak any English. We couldn't speak Lithuanian. We had Google Translator, and we were all having a great time. But across the street was a Hall of Records. So we went over there, but they couldn't. They said I needed an appointment, and it got too complicated. So we hadn't really planned that far in advance to make appointments for that type of stuff.
I'm
So
I'm really kind of surprised in terms of because I've been trying to do a lot of my own research for my family,
mhm,
and I keep bumping heads with the concept. Anything prior to the 1900, it's very
mhm.
difficult for me to find stuff on because a lot of my relatives migrated from Russia or from Poland through Germany, then to Ellis Island. And unfortunately, a lot of the Jewish records,
Yeah.
historical records, were destroyed either during the Russian Cossack revolt or during the Holocaust in Germany. So it's like very tough to kind of track that stuff.
I had the same problem. My grandparents, sorry, great grandparents, came from Russia. They actually left in the late 1800s. They saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah,
They
same line.
they came from Russia, but they were in Siberia. They had been sent to Siberia from Lithuania. Well, sorry, my great grandfather had been sent to Siberia from Lithuania, which is why I never really knew I was Lithuanian until I started meeting other cousins.
Mm,
And but the Lithuanian records, on the other hand, are really good because, again, as good as they can be from the 1800s. But again, the country was 45% Jewish, so there are a ton of records, and census. There's a website for genealogists to go on. Excuse me, Jewish genealogists to go on, to look at Lithuanian census records, and that's how we've been able to put a lot of the puzzle pieces together through various lines of the family.
nice. Do you happen to know the name of that site by any chance, or?
Jewishgenealogy.org, I believe.
Jewish genealogy.
I can send it to you to give to your students.
That'd be awesome if you could. I'd really appreciate it. I mean, anything I can. I was telling Morissa just before we met. I love meeting with her. Again, this is probably the eighth time we've had conversations, and every single time I learn something new. This is one of those things I am desperately trying to track down. And if you can assist me on that, I will certainly share this with my students, and I
Absolutely.
really appreciate it. Okay, so you are in Tenna, not
Utena.
Ant Newton. Okay,
Utena with a U. Utena. Utena. Or
Utena,
Utena. No.
Utena,
Yeah.
like with an umlaut or no?
No.
Okay,
No.
Utena.
They don't have an umlaut.
Okay. So you're in Utena, and then where are you going after that?
Well, if you go on to some of the photographs, I'll
Mhm.
kind of explain some of these locations.
Sure.
So the left picture, the picture on your screen to the left is Old Town Vilnius. Um, just, I
It's
mean,
lovely.
that's Old Town Vilnius.
It's
So
beautiful. I love it.
it's something that, when you hear about when you see a Disney movie or you read about a movie about old Europe, that's it. It's there. It's still there. The picture on the right. So one of the things I wanted to do was find a lot of the Holocaust sites, the Holocaust memorials, because of course Lithuania was occupied and taken over. The Lithuanians themselves were very complicit, so they're not without blame. But the younger generations are not like that whatsoever. It's a completely different world. It's a completely different situation. So all of these memorials are all over the place, all over the country, because it was so decimated. And you'll just be driving down the road and you'll find a memorial. Some of them are larger, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see some of them are small. This one we literally came upon on our way to Utena. We saw a little memorial sign in Lithuanian, but it's English letters, so you could kind of make out that it was some sort of Jewish Holocaust site. And I hit the brakes. I turned around and said, "Should we go back? Yeah, let's go back." And drove into the
Yeah, it's not
forest.
like you're going to be there again in like a year or something like
Exactly.
that.
So we drove literally on a dirt road into the forest, and it wasn't that far in. But I started getting a little nervous, like, this isn't really a road. Am I really going anywhere? So Amy got out and she went walking. She's like, yeah, 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 come on. And I went there, and this was the first Holocaust memorial we came across. And there was a Lithuanian woman walking her dog, that an very much older woman, and did give me a little bit of a glare, because I had gone to this memorial. But I had brought some rocks, which is a Jewish tradition to put rocks on a grave. It's a symbol of, hey, we remember you. And I was very emotional. It didn't. It came upon me very suddenly, that these people had lost their lives in this forest. And you can see the picture to the left is, they would take them out to the forest and just shoot them. Mothers, babies, children, fathers, didn't matter. So this was a very special moment, and we went to so many of them. But we were there on the, unbeknownst to us, the 75th anniversary of the liquidation of Vilna,
Mm.
which is now Vilnius. It was Vilna. In Yiddish, it was called Vilna. And I had the great fortune. We went to the Great Temple, which is a temple that is still there the Coral Temple. The Great Temple was destroyed. We went to the Coral Temple, which is still there, and I got to go up by the pulpit, or the bima, and read names. Where they read the names every year, but this was the 75th anniversary, so the ambassador was there and everything, and it was so incredibly moving. It was an experience I just can't even explain.
Can I can I talk with you really quick about something? Because when we tend to go to visit places, oftentimes, we're going for business or pleasure, and if we're going for pleasure, it's usually we're not going because of a tragedy or something like that. That's not why necessarily people
No.
want to go, but it's like I would also suggest not to avoid places like this because they're important historically. Like, for example, places where the Holocaust did take place,
Right.
or where massacres had taken place. Like, for example, when people go to France, they're not just thinking in terms of, I'm just going to go to Paris and that's it. You have Normandy, you have
Yeah.
places like this. When you're going to Germany, yeah, there's Berlin, but of course there's also a lot of where the
Yeah.
concentration camps were, and they are profoundly moving places, especially if you have a Jewish background. I can tell you when I went to just even Los Angeles, walking through the Holocaust
Mhm.
Museum, it's terrifying for someone of a Jewish background because
Mhm.
the end of that is you have to walk through a gas chamber, and
Yeah.
it's just scary. I mean, it's yeah, I get it. It's not exactly like a theme park, but understanding where you come from, understanding the challenges that are, you know,
It's important. I'll tell you, for me, personally, my direct family, I didn't lose anybody because they had come in the 1800s.
yeah,
My father, we found out when he was 70, was adopted, and his mother's family also came in the early 1900s. But my extended family and his adopted family, they lost most of everybody
yeah,
in Poland. But when I was at the Ponar, which is the Ponar Forest, and it's one of the largest Holocaust sites in Lithuania. And they were having a memorial the next day, and I didn't want to be there for the big memorial. I couldn't do it. But we went the day before, and even Amy, who is very nonplussed about things, started just weeping, and she's not Jewish, and started weeping openly. You can't help but understand history. If we don't understand history, we can't correct what's happening today. And I don't mean that as in literal terms necessarily, but yes, in literal terms. We have to understand history, and I think it's very important for everybody to experience that, Jewish, not Jewish, and not just the Jewish Holocaust sites. In Rwanda, if you're going to Africa, go to the Rwandan genocide sites, go to the Armenian genocide sites when you
mm,
go there. These things are important for people. And when I was in Punar, I took a photograph of the main. It's a Jewish menorah with right at the in the center of the forest, and then all of the pits are around it, and you can. It's just horrific, but there were some photographs laid in front of the menorah, and I took a picture and I posted it to my Facebook. And one of my cousins, distant cousins that lives in Israel, said, "That's our family." And I was still standing there at the time, and I mean, the tears just started falling. I had no idea.
now I do want to take a step back from this conversation because a location isn't necessarily completely defined by a tragedy. For example,
No.
you go to a city like Nuremberg, and yes, there were obviously, Holocaust was very big in that city. However, modern day,
Yeah.
you go during Christmas time, and they have these incredible Christmas markets, which are just spectacular, and it's welcoming and inviting, and so what I would advise students is that you might go to a place. uh, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, perfect examples.
Mhm.
They do an extraordinary job where there's been a lot of death to give a lot of life and to really show that they can that while there is tragedy in the world, there's also life and hope and beauty and all these
Yeah,
things that go along with it. So again, I want to leave my students with that really quick before, and
absolutely.
and in fact, let's move on to the next
Yeah.
one.
Well, I wanted to mention about Nagasaki is,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Hiroshima. When I was in Hiroshima, I took a published photograph that was later published of the dome that they have that's still there that was destroyed, and behind it is all the new construction, and it's out of the ashes, it's a phoenix. Out of the ashes springs hope and new life, and that's what you should really take anytime you travel anywhere. Is, yes, you might see things like this, but then realize that the life is better now.
Exactly. Now, this is a fascinating photography picture, and I'm blown away for a number of reasons. Number one, the sheer compactness of all this religion iconography, but it's also, I mean, I'm sure there's meaning behind it. Talk to me a little bit about the story behind this.
Well, this is called the Hill of Crosses,
Okay.
and everybody said you should see it. You should see it. I'm like, well, it sounds really interesting. So we drove out to see it. It was quite a ways, but I love driving the countryside in Lithuania. I got to tell you, it's fun. It's wonderful. And we get here, and I'm what this is a fraction. What you see in these photographs, it's a fraction of the amount of crosses. There's hundreds of thousands of them. And every time, because Lithuania is a primarily Catholic country,
Mhm.
every time someone passes, I'm not everybody, most people will put a memorial cross here at the Hill of Crosses. So they're all different sizes, and I don't know how or why it started, but it's incredible to walk around, and they have paths that you can walk around through it, and it is a literal hill in the middle of nowhere, and it's fascinating. Sometimes it'll tell the story. Sometimes you'll get a really old cross and a lot of new crosses, little ones, big ones. People leave rosaries. It's just a fascinating place.
It looks unearthly, I think is the best term I can use
It
for it.
does.
It's just
It's unique. It's
incredibly
really
fascinating.
yeah, it is. It's fascinating, fascinating place. And there is a story behind it where somebody put a cross there, and then other people started putting crosses. But I'm sure there's more to in depth of the story. But it's just fascinating, and it doesn't matter what religion you are. It is really an iconic place that people should visit and pay homage to. I mean, it's a it's a memorial site.
It's awe-inspiring. It's
Love
fantastic.
it. But it's just fascinating.
Look at this beautiful place.
Fun place.
So for my people on the podcast, what I'm looking at right now is a beautiful castle with what looks like a moated lake. Talk to me a little bit about this place.
Trichy, the town of Trichy, it's not that far out of Vilnius. If you don't have a car, you can take a day trip. Plan a day trip. You could take a taxi,
Mhm.
or you could take an actual, planned bus trip to Trichy. We had the car, so we went to Trichy, and the lake is just gorgeous. It is a moat lake. It's gorgeous. We rented a pedal boat, a little pedal boat.
That's
Yeah,
cute.
it was fun. Legs killed me, but it was fun. Had to sit down and have lunch and beer after that. But
Of course.
prior to going into the castle, we actually took a pedal boat and went around the lake, getting photographs of all different sides and what have you. But it was just so much fun, and you'd see other people and you'd wave, and it wasn't too busy though. But it's just a gorgeous castle. It was a beautiful day, as you can see.
So with this castle and located in the city or the town of Trakai, is this an older castle? Is this a relatively oh, okay, it is. Okay.
It's a very old castle. I don't know offhand what the date of construction was, but it is very old. I'm gonna say maybe the 1600s,
Okay.
if not older. And I think it was at one time, if I'm not mistaken, either a summer castle, or it could have even been more of a main castle for the region. And as Europe has a lot of castles, Lithuania is not without them, although this is one of the few. But it's just incredible, and you can go inside and you walk through all the different levels, and it's a museum. You can see artifacts and what have you, and just beautiful. It's a beautiful day. It's a wonderful respite.
The
And
weather looks gorgeous when you took this picture. It
and
absolutely
this
looks like
is September.
spring or summertime. Yeah.
It was beautiful summer, end of summer weather. Not too hot, not cold, just perfect.
Wonderful. Okay, and then after, of course, all of these, you end up heading back to the States, of course. So
Uh,
talk to me a little bit about let's unpack all of this at this point. Talk to me about what are the pros of going to a place like Lithuania?
They're all pros. There are no cons. It's first of all, at the time at least, value for dollar was incredible. Part of the that's part of the allure of Eastern Europe is still getting the flavor of Europe while getting value for your dollar.
Mm-hmm.
I need another cup of coffee.
That's okay.
And
Seriously.
there's so much to see. It's beautiful. It's relatively safe. Never felt unsafe whatsoever. Even walking in the evening, never felt unsafe. At one point, we ran out of walks, and I walked by myself over to the market and grabbed some more. Never a worry. So it's a safe country. It's one of the safer European countries. It's sparsely populated, so there are no cons to it. It's beautiful.
Wonderful. Now, what are some things that a person might want to be aware of with respect to this? Anything someone
Nothing.
needs? There's really not a lot. I mean, obviously, you don't need a visa to go there. You just need your
No,
passport, which is great. If you're, the foods are going to be kind of hearty, so you just need to be
we
kind of
didn't run into scams at all. The
lovely.
people are very genuine. We even got a massage one day, very relatively inexpensive, especially by American standards. I think it was
Mhm.
like $50 maybe.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, it might have even been less. And that was with tip. Um, there's really nothing to be too aware of. I mean, and again, I don't know about during a time when there might be an election or something like that going on. But in just average normal time, nothing. It was just delightful.
So you didn't feel like there was any like you said, there's no cons, there's no there's
No,
no there's no cons in terms of the opposite of pros, but there's also no cons in terms of people trying to steal money from you either.
no scams, nothing. People are very friendly. We went to another town and just we were driving out for the day and we stopped for lunch and just found a restaurant and
Driving
eh,
on driving on the left side of the road or right side
right
of the
side of the
road?
road.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
like
yeah, everything's
yeah.
pretty much
So it would be very familiar to American drivers. Now one thing to be aware of is most cars are as in all of Europe are going to be manual. So
okay.
so it is a good thing to brush up on your
Stick
skills
shift.
driving
Yeah.
a stick shift because you can rent an automatic, but they're few and far between, and it's going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
So if you're going to rent a car, just brush up on skills or learn how to drive a stick.
Okay, perfect. And then any value adds, cost savings, best practices that you'd like to share with the students?
Well, for cost savings, I would say Airbnb.
Hmm.
Depending on the time of year, you probably don't even have to book ahead. We were staying for a week in one place, so I booked ahead. But I would imagine that you can probably, get even small hotels. You could probably get in other towns without a problem. So your cost savings is going to probably be there, but also expense wise, food and things like that are value for dollar is great. So
That's fantastic. Oh
try the
my God.
beer. You have a beer. I have a
Oh
beer.
yeah.
So
I was gonna say the local food, it sounds like was really quite amazing.
yeah,
So
it's fantastic. If I stayed any longer, probably would not have fit in the airplane seat.
well, Morissa, I always enjoy speaking with you. You are such a fountain of incredible knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing that with my students.
My pleasure.
And those beautiful pictures that you have, those are available through your website, correct?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. And so I have the link for your Facebook on this for people who can see this. I'll
Mhm.
include that in the show notes when we post the podcast. Also, you can be found on Instagram and then, of course, at your website, which is fredericophotography.com, correct?
Correct.
Excellent. Well, Morissa, thank you again for sparing your time with me. I look forward to it every time we spend time together. It's fantastic. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Now, for my students that are out there, if you have any questions or comments, need to know a little bit more about stuff, or just you're shy to try and contact Morissa, you can always reach me out too. Yeah, exactly. You can contact me at scott@theprofessortravel.com. If you like this video and you would like to be notified about when new videos go up, click that bell icon right above us here in order to be notified about that. If you haven't already subscribed, please feel free to do so. It doesn't cost anything and it does help out the channel. If you like this content and you want to see more of it, give us a thumbs up, a like on this YouTube channel. And then finally, if you're listening to us on the podcast, please rate us and review us. We really do appreciate it. But until our next time, make every day a travel adventure. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.